Let's learn how to quilt circles with rulers. Hi, I'm Kim Jamieson-Hirst of Chatterbox Quilts, and today we are going to be using our ruler quilting function on my Janome CM17. Thanks to Janome Canada for letting me use this machine to show you how to do this. And we're going to be using a ruler from Silly Moon Quilting Company. So this one is called Beanie. This is the Beanie 6'2" ruler. And there are different beanies, and they are a ruler that you can use to quilt circles. You can also do other things with them too. But the nice thing about these is that you can do two different sizes of circles with each beanie. So as I said, I'm using Beanie 6'2". So the outer side of Beanie will give me a 6-inch circle. The inside area will give me a 2-inch circle. And you can see I've got lots of ruler stickers on here because I wanted to show you some things. I'm going to be using some of these markings on the ruler as we go along today too. So a couple things I wanted to point out to you. I wanted to talk about these holes that you see in the ruler and the lines that you'll see going, running on either side of those holes. And what are those holes? Well, those holes are centering guides, I would call them, okay? So you can see here, there's a line that goes right through that circle. That is the center of Beanie, okay? So symmetrical on either side, right? So that's your center reference line that you may be using depending on, what markings you have on your quilt, but that's important to know where the center of the ruler is. Also, the other way, here, there are these two circles, or holes I should say here. Well, they're circles too, but holes that you have here, and there's also lines going through. I've got my little stickers on the one, but this is also what you want to line up with a reference line to give you a complete, full, perfect circle, all right? And I'm going to show you how to do that. But I wanted to explain some of the, why there's these holes on here and some of the lines here. There's also diagonal lines, and there's other lines too to line up to give you a little bit of different shape and different sizes with Beanie as well. So let's take this off, and we'll take this off, and let's talk about some of the things you can do with this ruler, which of course the first thing is that you can make circles using your ruler foot. So I've got my Janome CM17 set up for ruler quilting, all right? It actually has a menu, an option on the menu to do that. And if you're wondering how to do that, don't worry, you can find that out because I got a video on that. Check up above or in the description below for a link to that video. And of course I have my ruler foot on, very important to have a ruler foot when you're doing ruler quilting. So let's go over and see. I've got some reference lines on my quilt sandwich here, and often when you're doing ruler quilting you will need to use reference lines, not always, but don't be afraid to put reference lines on your quilt to help you as you're doing this type of quilting. Of course, you want to make sure that they're erasable. So I'm using a Choco marker here. I'll show you what that is. Actually, I am actually using this little guy here. This is a Clover Choco marker, and it's filled with some Miracle Pounce kind of powder. So what it does is it erases with heat, so I can put an iron on afterwards and take these marks off. All right. So I've got my line up here, and I want to start with the 2-inch circle. So that's the interior area here on Beanie. So I had talked about those lines that are on the ruler, and I have put my ruler stickers on there to help me remember where they are. Okay, if I can't remember, they're where the holes are. So what I'm going to be doing, let's see if I can show you here, is I want to be lining up those lines on the ruler with, actually I'll come over here. Okay, you can't see it there. My ruler foot's getting in the way. You want to line up the lines, okay? So there's the lines right there and there, and I'm going to line those up with my reference line here, okay? Then I'm going to be stitching inside. So I'm going to be stitching half of the circle first. I'm going to stop with my needle down, and then I'm going to move Beanie. It's going to be butting up against my ruler foot, and again using those same marks on the ruler to line it up on my reference line to give me the rest of the circle, okay? Sounds complicated, it's not, okay? Okay, but I just want to explain that to you. So let's start here. I can start anywhere I want on my reference line, and we're going to put those lines on Beanie, on the reference line, and I like to put my foot down first and then move my ruler foot into the appropriate area. And I go down and I'm going to pull up my bobbin thread. Give it a little tug, there it is. Okay, and usually what I like to do, and this is not necessarily with the ruler, but the ruler gives me a bit of guidance here, is I like to go back and forth a few times to lock my stitches here. All right, and then I'm going to move along. And just want to check again. It's always a good idea to check, make sure my template is against my ruler foot, make sure those lines are lined up, you know, the appropriate lines are lined up. You'll notice I have this kind of grip tape underneath that helps to keep that ruler in place. So here we go. Something else you can do as you go along is get rid of that tail. Clip that off in a little while. Okay, there we go. So I'm starting and stopping on that reference line as well, okay? So now I've got my needle down, okay, my foot's in place. I need to move Beanie. So Beanie is gonna go around, and at this point in time, I am gonna grab my snips here, and I'm going to actually snip off this thread, because I don't need to get that stuck when I'm quilting, do I? All right. So next thing we need to do, we're going to go back again. We're going to look at those lines, make sure they're lined up on my reference line. The line on the ruler is lined up on the reference line I've drawn. My template is against my ruler foot. And then we're going to complete the other side of the circle. Okay, so I've done that. Now you see I have a little bit of a wobble here. Okay, I'm going to go back to the other side. Okay, because if I wanted to continue on to another circle, I want to go, well, in this direction. I want to go back here because then I would move Beanie and I would start again. So let's do that. I'm off again. All right, so you can see that I've got I had a little bit of wobble there too. I could pick that up if I want, or I might just leave it. We'll see what we're going to do with this later on. So that is operator error, okay? That has nothing to do with the template, okay? That is me not having the template pressed against the ruler foot, or having the ruler foot against the template, really, because the template's being held in place, right? Okay, so that can happen. It's not a big deal. Like I said, you could pick it out if you wanted to. You've got stitches over top of themselves here, so it's going to lock the stitches in place. They're not going to come out. So you don't really have to worry about it. Okay, now if I wanted to keep going on here, what I would do is I've got my needle down, right? We're stopping on the line again, and I am lining things up again, all right? So I'm just lining up here, lining up the other side, and we would keep going. All right, so you can see that's a little bit better that time, right? And then again, I would turn Beanie around, line it up again, and keep going to make a circle. Or maybe I just wanted to do this. Maybe I want to have like a clamshell, right? We could do that, couldn't we? And that would continue on. We would continue on here. Let me get my line straight. All right, so you can see that we could have a clamshell look. We could keep going with that because you've got a half circle. That's really what a clamshell is, right? Okay, so I'm going to cut my thread here because now let's see what you can do with Beanie when we go to the 6-inch circle. So that is the outside of Beanie, all right? So same kind of way of creating it, except that you're not going to be inside, you're going to be outside. And I got to say, I find being outside on templates a little more challenging because when you're inside, you know, you've got something that stops your ruler foot, right? That kind of keeps it in place. On the outside, you know, you could be wandering off to who knows where. So you have to pay a little more attention. At least for me, I find that I have to pay a little bit more attention. So let's talk about how to do this. So I'm moving down to another reference line here, and you can see that I've got a vertical one as well. So I can use the line on Beanie here. So again, using those same lines next to the circles, or the open circles there, the holes. And this time though, I would line it up with these as I did before, but also with this vertical line too. And then I'm going to be putting my ruler foot down the outside and going around, stopping at my reference line before moving Beanie down again. Lining up my lines here, lining up my line here as well. Okay, a few things. My foot would still be over there, right? So I'm making sure that template's against it, and then I'd be going up here. And if I wanted to continue on in this direction, I would come back. Okay, let's do some stitching. It's always easier when you do the stitching part, right? You can see what I'm actually doing. So let's do that. All right, so we got everything set up there. Set my foot down. That's not where I'm going to start. I'm I'm going to start down here. I can't quite see my line there, my reference line, but it's very close there. Okay, we're going to bring up our bobbin thread here. Oops. Well, we're going to try and bring it up. Helps if you hold on to the tail, right? When you bring it up. There we go. All right, and again, I want to do a few locking off stitches. If you wanted to, of course, you could bury your threads. You could pull up enough of your bobbin thread and your top thread and bury your thread. You could do that as well. But I find just going back and forth with some locking stitches works very well. All right, so just double checking everything, and here we go. Pull my threads out of there, and let's just clip them right now. Okay. Oops. See, there's a bit of a bobble there where I've gone off. Yes, I'm not perfect. So what can I do there? Well, what I'm going to do right now is I am going to finish my circle, okay, because we're already almost there. And then we'll go back and address the bobble. Okay, so let's line things up here. Make sure we're on there. We're off slightly here. I don't think that's going to be a problem. Let's keep going here. And you usually have to stop and do some repositioning of your hands. And just to get that last little bit there. All right, so I could come back again if I wanted to. I'm just gonna break my thread here for a minute. Okay, so we got a little bit of a bobble there for sure. All right, so depending on what I'm doing, I may decide to leave it, or I may decide to go back and fix it. Okay, so we could put our beanie back in position. All right. And I can go back over here, and I'm going to put my needle down, make sure it's going to be there. It might be off just a tidge. Okay, and I would bring up my bobbin thread. Again, however you're going to lock your stitches. Get that bobbin thread up there. There we go. I can go back and forth a little bit here, just a little bit. All right, and I'm just checking again here. I'm off just a little bit there. There we go. Okay, and I'm just going to go back and I'm going to stitch back over. I'll show you when I'm done and fix that. All right, and then I would also lock my stitches. Okay, so what I would do here is I would come back, cut that off obviously, and I would take these stitches out because then I'm going to have my circle that's going to be perfect-ish, right? Okay, so it depends on how much of a bobble you've got there. I also have a little tiny one down here maybe, but you won't notice that in the end result, right? Keep in mind, you're not usually working on fabric like this either. You usually work on patterned fabrics. You really don't see these little bobbles. Okay, what else can we do here? There's a bunch of things we can do that I want to show you. So let's say we've got two circles here that we can work with, right? So we've got the 6-inch circle here now. We could, if we wanted to, put a 2-inch circle inside, right? Just like what we were doing there. We could put a 2-inch circle next to it, right? You could do a small circle, a big circle, a small circle, something like that. Or you could do some things inside, and that's what I want to show you right now, actually, is some options for using this template to add some additional interest inside your circles. I'm going to work with the bigger one just because it'll be easier for you to see. So you could do things like this. So I've taken this, I've turned Beanie upside down, okay, poor Beanie is on its head, and you can work with these diagonal lines that are here. Okay, they're not going to be perfectly lined up, but they give me an idea, the angle here, if it's the same kind of angle on both sides, plus I've got my center here, and I could stitch here. Okay, so that's going to give some interest inside the circle. And again, I could sew with the 6-inch side, or I could sew with the 2-inch side, right, depending on what I want to do there and where I'm at in my circle. Obviously, I couldn't sew with the 2-inch side if I'm in the middle of the circle, or I'm just going to get a little, a little thing like this. But when I get close to the ends, I could use that if I wanted to, rather than the outside of Beanie. All right, so we're just going to go on the outside here and stitch along and see what we get. Okay, so I've got a little half circle here, all right? And I know you probably can't see this, but what I want to show you is if I want to continue adding these, I can either use a measurement or I can wing it. I like to wing it, depending on what you're doing. But what I want to show you is how you move up. So if I want to put several of these half circles inside the circle, how do I move up? Well, you're going to do some creative stitching here. You're going to do a little bit of free motion quilting slowly along the edge that you've already stitched. So you just kind of go along a little bit. Okay, however quickly you feel comfortable doing, right? It might not be that fast at all. And then I can go up here and I can go back. All right, so I'm just going to break thread here to show you. Okay, and by the way, when I was doing that coming back, I had just moved it up, but I was still lining up that center line on Beanie along the center vertical line I had drawn. So you could keep, you could have these all, you could measure and have them all the same width if you wanted to. You could make them, uneven widths, whatever you wanted to do, but you can just keep moving Beanie up there. Or like I was saying, when you get close to the top, you can be using that 2-inch one there, but you couldn't use it down here. You're just going to get, unless you want to do that whole circle in the center, right? So that's something else you can do, something like that. And then there's something else you can do. And what's kind of fun about these is you can just kind of play around with this and not have, like I said, you don't have to have equal widths between your lines if you don't want to. You can also do some other things that you don't have to do any measuring or paying attention really to the lines on the ruler, although they're very helpful for most things, of course. But if you wanted to go inside and do some lines inside, you could do that as well. So what I do then is I will line up Beanie about in the center there, but I'm going to move Beanie. I'm going to angle Beanie, okay? Whatever angle I want, keeping in mind that, we're going to be 1/4 of an inch in here, right? So now, excuse me, I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to start at the center-ish area of Beanie here. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. All right. I'm losing my little thread here. It's being stubborn. There we go. Lock your threads. Okay. And I'm just going to go and stitch up the side here and see what I get. And I don't have to do a whole half circle. That sounds weird, doesn't it? I don't have to do a half circle. I can go up as far as I want. And then what I want to do is come back down again. So you're going to keep your needle down as you start coming back, and you're going to keep Beanie in place as well. So we come back to the beginning, and then we can turn Beanie a little bit more, okay? So again, I'm trying to keep that center line, sort of on that center vertical line. Obviously, we're going on an angle here, so it's not going to be perfect with that, but close enough. I don't want to move Beanie, a whole ways away. So I just knock Beanie off there, okay? And I'm going to move my Beanie angle again. Okay, here we go. Let's see what we got this time. All right. So then I can change it again because I like to do things in you know, odd numbers, right? So we're gonna, you know, all I'm doing is swiveling Beanie. Okay, and we're gonna go up again. All right. Okay, so this is what we're going to get, okay? So what I was doing was I was lining up, you know, I was using that center line and then just swiveling, okay? Swiveling about like that for the first one I went up. And then I just continued swiveling, right? As much as I want. And you'll also notice these are not all the same length either. I intentionally did that. So I've got longer, shorter, shorter. Then I could go on the other side and do the same kind of thing. Line this up, swivel Beanie, and again, I just eyeball this. And, you know, I could do the same kind of thing, so I could have a symmetrical, relatively symmetrical. They won't be perfectly the same. The angles might be off a little bit and the length might be off, but in the final effect, they will look pretty much, you know, symmetrical. Nobody's going to notice a huge difference unless you really made them a lot shorter or, you know, went really crazy on the angle or something. But it's easy to do that just by eyeballing it. It doesn't have to be measured. So that gives you some extra things to do there. So that's just a few of the things that you can do with Beanie from Silly Moon Quilt Company. If you're interested in getting Beanie, and as I mentioned, there's other sizes of them as well, check up above or in the description below because I'll have a link for you to do that. Now you might be wondering what else you can do with quilting rulers. Well, don't worry, I got you covered. Check out this video that has all the information that you need. And for more helpful quilting information, be sure to go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com.